This is Sunset Vibes TV. Raw.
Thank you very much, Minister. And everyone should know that is not why you have been reappointed as Minister. Allow me to again acknowledge our hard-working Minister of Foreign Affairs, our newly appointed Ambassador to the United States, man with so many titles, Major General, former Commissioner of Police, former Chief of Defense Staff, a fantastic Jamaican who has contributed so much to the development of Jamaica. I just call him Tony. Ambassador Brian Wallace, our permanent representative to the UN, someone who I've known for many years, and who is making his own mark in the UN as a well-respected voice foreign policy that supports our economic development and protects our interests, which includes the interests of our diaspora. So that's how you should consider foreign policy and our engagement. It is the creation of an umbrella of protection under which we all benefit. Whether you're in the diaspora or you're living in Jamaica, you know that you have the coverage of your Ministry of Foreign Affairs and your government. You know, during the pandemic, during other crises, you people who travel appreciate the value of having your embassy, your consulate, your high commission, because they do give you coverage and protection. So this is my first overseas engagement since I was re-elected to this position of Prime Minister. And just to say a few things on that, we know that there is no honeymoon in this election, so we are going right back to work. We took no break. The government never took a break. Government operated seamlessly throughout the elections. Those of you who observed it, you would realize that the administration that we lead is one that operates seamlessly. But that is a self-reinforcing good, because for the government to be elected, it then can't rely wholly and solely on its base, meaning the people who will support it regardless of its performance. The government, to be elected, has to appeal to the reasonable middle, has to perform, and has to deliver a better proposition. So now we have performance-based government. That's effectively what this election has thrown up. And I've said this to my ministers, that we have now set this new paradigm and we're going to be judged by it. And I think they all understand that. And so we are already looking to put together for the Jamaican people an incredible and irresistible proposition for a fourth term. I want to thank you, the members of the diaspora, for your support for Jamaica, your commitment to Jamaica. I want to point this out to you. Some of you may know this, but approximately 17% of Jamaica's GDP would amount from remittances. What you send back home, it's not just stopping a gap. It's absolutely important. Important. And I remember during the pandemic, when incomes just disappeared, it was the remittances that kept grandma, uncle, cousin, that kept the people who were on the periphery of our society, the most vulnerable, that kept them alive, kept them surviving during the pandemic. And you continue to do this. Your remittances send children to school, ensure households have food and amenities. It's invaluable. But we are moving now into a different dispensation where remittances and philanthropic endeavors will continue to be important. But there are other avenues now where the diaspora can make significant contributions. The perspective when I speak to members of the diaspora is, I want to help. I want to be able to give back. But it's very difficult when you come into the Jamaican environment. It's very difficult to find your way around. And then there is always the perspective, what are you going to do to make it easier for members of the diaspora to be able to participate in the country? And I have a simple answer. It's not about making it easier for any category of Jamaicans. It is about just making Jamaica easy for everyone. That's the solution. So, in the last 30 years, Jamaica has become a very complicated bureaucracy, where it is almost impossible, very difficult to do business in Jamaica.
Yes,
And I won't go into too much of it, but we have been going through several reforms, and each wave of reform comes with its own set of rules. And now we need to do a reform of the reform. Literally, that's what needs to happen now. So we did a reform, let's say, in procurement, and that added a whole layer of rules. We did a reform in public sector investment and expenditure, which we call the PIAD process. So government can't spend without, especially capital expenditure, without a certain set of policies and procedures following. That adds another layer, another set of rules. Then we have the AML and other financial requirements. That adds another set of rules and regulations. Then we have anti-corruption regulations. And it has become, there's nothing wrong with a complex system. And the definition of strong and resilient system is that they're complex. But when they become complicated, that's when you have a problem. And I think our systems have become very complicated, very difficult to maneuver. And sometimes you could say that they are self-serving. In other words, they're only there, they only exist to perfect the rule rather than to deliver the service. And that is a big problem. And that is why my administration, long before the election, we have said that we are going to review all of this, and we have put in place a program which we call SPEED, and that is being led by our former ambassador to the United States, Ambassador the Honorable Audrey Marks, who is now a Minister with Portfolio, Office of the Prime Minister. And so she will be addressing all of this. She will be dealing with our business process re-engineering. We'll be looking at the integration of technology and digitization, use of AI, and working with business to ensure that the steps to productivity are as few as possible and easy to scale as possible. So that is something that the diaspora should pay attention to, because the objective is to make efficiency and investment attraction for Jamaica. So yes, we want Jamaica to be the fastest and easiest place to do business in the world while being compliant with global standards. That's the objective. So we are not saying we're going to become a non-compliant jurisdiction. Absolutely not. We will maintain quality, we will maintain standards, we will maintain compliance, but we will certainly re-engineer our processes to make them more efficient and to make them more relevant to the needs of the people. Now, another element of our mission is to make Jamaica more productive. Let me quickly give some background to that, because whenever we talk about productivity, immediately in the minds of the listening public, I'm saying let's work more efficiently, and people may be interpreting that as saying you expect me to work harder for less pay. It is, some of it is, we can't escape our history. Can't escape our history, and when you talk to someone who is working very hard and getting minimum wage, this idea of productivity is not going to click. What clicks is pay me more first. And I can appreciate and understand that, because from your perspective, you're already working hard and not being paid enough. So I'm very cautious how I broach this conversation about productivity. But if you allow me a few minutes to put it in context, and to our friends listening on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and people who are listening, I want you to listen to what I'm saying, divorced of cultural and historical context. Now, Jamaica, let's say 15 years ago, was on the brink of financial ruin. Almost at the brink of bankruptcy, almost. And it forced the leaders of the country, business, political, unions, and otherwise, to recognize that the high interest rate policy would lead, was leading the country to ruin. And they agreed that they would have to do something about it. And with partnership of the IMF, we embarked on a journey of fiscal discipline. Fiscal meaning the management of the tax revenues and public expenditure of the country. And that is now viewed as the textbook classic case of how a country can reform itself. Right? So Jamaica was once considered the basket case. Now it is the case study. And that took, of course, social partnership. It took our business people to understand that real sacrifices were made. Some of you may remember that there were several debt exchanges, NDX1, JDX, and so forth, where business people literally took haircuts of their debt. The unions made sacrifices as well. There were several wage freezes that capped the increases of wages to the public sector for several years. The public made huge sacrifices. In 3 budgets, the government hauled in, my recollection, between $30 to $60 billion in new taxes in order to fund the budget. Government had to limit expenditure on a whole host of social services. But at the end of it, Jamaica developed fiscal discipline. We ran a 7% primary surplus for like 5 or 6 years, very high, in order to pay down debt. The result of that story is that our debt was as high as 144%. I recall if you put certain other entities in it, it would be as high as 151%. Now, today, our debt is 62% relative to our GDP. So before, percent of GDP. And our debt servicing requirements have gone down significantly. So that's a good story. But where we are today will not carry us without peril if we don't grow. So in other words, we have managed to bring down the debt with very moderate growth, but by wringing out the greatest discipline in managing public expectations that drive expenditure, controlling wages, and the debt exchanges that we have done in the past, and just making the sacrifice to pay down the debt. But you can't do that forever, because people are going to put political pressure to have our streets clean, political pressure to have better education, better health care, water and roads. Those water and roads were the greatest demand for people in the elections as I moved around. And we have programs there showing that yes, we're attending to roads and we're attending to water. But imagine that you live in Hanover, for example, or some areas of Westmoreland, and for 30 years your road has not been repaired, and every day you get up and you walk outside, you can't even wear high-heel shoes out there because that's where they end up. I'm riding on the road, I was driving on the road and a youngster rode past me on his bicycle. And he said, "Prime Minister, you can't fix the road for me, I can't ride my bicycle easier." So you see, the political pressure will build on governments to take on expenditure that their revenues can't support. So the fiscal discipline that we have, that is government saying, I can only do so much within the envelope of what the revenues of the country afford me. That's what we've been doing. And we have managed to do 10 budgets without asking for any new taxes. In fact, we have cut taxes. But in the next 10 years, that can't or will not hold forever. And I want to be clear, because everything I'm saying, I'm sure somebody's going, I don't want anybody to talk that to say that I'm proposing, taxes in the coming years. That's not what I'm saying. Clear. What I'm saying is that fiscal discipline can carry you so far. The next step now, which we have already announced, our Pivot to Growth and our Aspire program, is to grow the economy. We must grow the economy, because the expectations of our people will drive a particular political economy that could imperil the fiscal discipline. And as a politician, I recognize that the Jamaican people have had pain points that they have had to suffer with, and they have been deprived of things that they have expected for a long time, and that can result in its own political dynamic. People are going to, I want my road now, I want the housing now, I want these things now. To hell with fiscal discipline and so forth. Just go borrow and spend again. You see how it could just unravel everything? Right? So of course, politicians like myself, we have a role. I have to stand at a microphone like this and explain it, which is why I said earlier, divorce your viewing of this from your cultural and historical context and just look at it dispassionately to understand exactly what I'm saying. Because there is a view with a lot of our citizenry that you don't have an impact on government. In other words, there's a view that no matter what I do, it will not impact government. But that's absolutely not true. Every one of us has an impact on government, and it can either be positive or negative. And a lot of people are acting, believing that their actions are positive, but when taken together, it can have a negative impact on government. And we have seen this before in our history, where politicians have seen the pressure being brought by the people and said, you know what, let me run with it. Because that's what that was about. Let me run with it. So, you know, the actions of the person saying, I want my road repaired and government not doing anything, fix my road. When all of that is taken together and it gets wrapped up in polls and politicians see it and they say, no, we're going to lose if we don't do that. What do you think will happen? Yes, they're going to make policies that totally unravel. And even though we have built institutions to protect against unreasonable policies, it can still happen. You know, when you hear of a promise that you're going to increase the tax threshold to $3.5 million and it's going to cost $75 billion to do that. Of course, people are moved by that. And if you got a government that decided to do that, it would totally unravel fiscal discipline. Which is why I go back to my point.